Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how are you doing today?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. We've got a great summer day here in the Northeast, but around the country, things are going crazy. We've got wildfires out west, really high temperatures in the Midwest and Northwest. So, for those of you who are in uncomfortable situations, our hearts go out to you.
Yeah, it's actually a little bit smoky in the air out here too from those Canadian wildfires. So it's been a crazy month this July. We're winding it down. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, we're heading into the end of the summer already.
Well,
I don't know where the time is going.
Yeah, I mean, one of the nice things about July though is there's a great concert series in Simsbury, and I was there on Friday night, and wonder upon wonders, we have a guest today who was there too.
Nice segue. Yes, our guest today is Eric Hutchinson from the Hartford Symphony. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Chip and Eric. It's great to be here with you today.
So, Eric, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at the Hartford Symphony?
Absolutely. Well, my name is Eric Hutchinson. As you said, I am the Corporate and Foundation Relations Manager for the Hartford Symphony Orchestra in the beautiful city of Hartford, Connecticut, which basically means that I get to work with businesses large and small and foundations large and small. So everything spanning from the National Endowment for the Arts and all the different government relations groups that are sponsoring lots of grants at this time, to small mom and pop shops around the Hartford, Connecticut area, and tell them about the great things that we're doing at the Hartford Symphony and try to figure out how our mission aligns with their mission and see how our values can support their values in a way that can keep the music playing. So it's fantastic. It's my favorite part of the job is working with people to kind of figure out why they love music and to get to know these people who are so generous. And our mission could not sustain but for the hard work of our supporters. So it's great to be here in this role and to work with all the businesses around the state of Connecticut and beyond. I've been with the Hartford Symphony now for about a year and a half. I actually started on February 4th of 2020, which was just under 6 weeks before the world shut down. So it was an interesting transition time. Previous to that, I worked as the executive director for several YMCAs around the state of Connecticut, and I was in that role for 10 years, right after being just a full-time traveling and teaching musician previous to that. So it kind of married my passion for music with my passion for fund development and the nonprofit world, and ended up being the perfect situation for me.
Fantastic. What do you play?
I'm a percussionist primarily, so I did my undergrad at Berklee College of Music in Boston in music education, performance, and songwriting on the drums.
Very nice.
Going into your bio in the website, it looks like you've done some recordings too.
I have. I've done a number of records, and I've been very lucky to have many of those be very well received. My 2013 album, Lullabies and Love Songs, spent about 52 weeks in the top 100 list on Amazon, and I've done a few solo albums since then, as well as performing with a bunch of different groups as a backup drummer for those groups. So it's a good time. I love to play music. It's my escape, and I'm very lucky that it's also my profession.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I have a 19-month-old granddaughter. I'll have to look up that Lullabies and Love Songs. That sounds really nice.
Absolutely. It puts, don't listen while you're driving. That's my only disclaimer, because it puts them to sleep pretty quickly. It works on my own children, and they're pretty rambunctious. So I appreciate that test market right there at home.
Yeah, we'll put the headphones on her.
That's the way to do it.
So Hartford Symphony, if I'm not mistaken, has been around since the 1930s.
That's correct.
You joined just prior to COVID. How does a symphony pivot for something like this?
It's kind of remarkable to see how everything was put into place. This isn't the first time that the symphony has had to pivot. We've had many occasions like this, but nothing exactly on this level. You mentioned us being around since the 1930s. We're actually entering our 77th season this fall. And if you look at that math, it doesn't quite line up. And the reason for that is we had to pivot in the early years due to World War II, when many of our members of the orchestra were overseas fighting for our country. Therefore, it was impossible to have a symphony orchestra at that time. So we had to kind of put things on pause. We had to move forward with what we had after people got back, and we were able to sustain that way. Pivoting for COVID was much different. Basically, we are very lucky that this happened as we were in a strong position. Many arts organizations went into this in not such a strong position, and they did not survive or may not survive past the reopening of things. We were in a strong financial place, and climbing, we had just had one of our best financial seasons to date. And the staff was in a good position, the orchestra was in a good position, and that way we were extremely lucky. Also, we're lucky this happened during a time when the technology already existed to bring many of us together. When you're working with an organization that's kind of predicated on the ability to gather, it can be very different and difficult when you can't gather. But through online mediums, through the ability to do video recordings, to do remote recordings, to offer Zoom conversations, to meet remotely, that really helped us get through this difficult time. And then financially, we were almost entirely sustained on contributed revenue. So people who kept their donations going, people who donated back tickets that they had purchased through different grants for which we applied, through some government funding, and through a lot of the corporations that still prioritize development in the arts during this time, we were able to sustain through that period. So we are incredibly lucky to come out of this as strong as we are. We still took quite a hit in the revenue department, and we are extremely excited to be back on stage, but we're very, very lucky to be as strong as we are right now.
Yeah, that's great. To give our listeners a little context, over the course of COVID, the average nonprofit saw their donations and revenue drop about 50%. The average arts nonprofit saw their donations and revenues drop 80%. So we're talking about a major drop that most arts groups had to contend with.
Exactly. And something important to remember is it's very expensive to mount a symphony orchestra. When you go to a performance and you purchase a ticket, earned revenue, so the money brought in by ticket sales, only represents about 40% of what it costs to actually put on a performance. If we were to charge the full 100% in earned revenue to put on a performance, nobody would be able to come see the symphony. It would just be cost prohibitive for pretty much everybody. So that other 60%-ish is made up through contributed revenue. So it's corporate and foundation entities that are willing to make donations or sponsorships or invest in the mission that we have going on here. And it's individuals who appreciate the symphony. They want to leave this legacy behind for their children. So they're either making smaller individual donations or promising funds to the orchestra through planned giving. So that makes up the other 60%. And while that 40% is vital to what we're doing and earned revenue, we were incredibly lucky to be able to, through a number of different measures and a number of different people working very intensely to keep the symphony afloat, to stay with our head above water, using that 60% and actually grow that 60%.
Yeah, it looks like you do a whole lot of community outreach in a lot of different ways too. So I imagine you still have a lot of support from that. I mean, in the website it mentions school programs, community programs, adult education, student opportunities. Talk about Hartford Symphony Orchestra and the community and what you're doing out there.
Absolutely. Well, in non COVID times, we are incredibly active in our community and physically going into schools. We have a program called Link Up and a Discovery Series, which actually works directly with the students in the school to help provide resources, to give them exposure to a symphony orchestra, to let them know what instruments sound like, to let them know what different styles of music sound like, to allow them to meet our musicians and our conductors and to really give them a sense of what it means to be invested in classical music. Obviously, we couldn't do that during the pandemic, and we're still not able to do that. So, the first thing that we did when we kind of entered our lockdown is we created a new platform for virtual programming called HSO to Go. And this was basically a free online stage for students and patrons to consume content. Let's just look at the last year that we've had. We posted 11 musician instructional videos for students. We ran a program called Masterworks in Depth, which takes you through the music that we would normally be producing on a Masterworks series, but that's explained by our conductor, Carolyn Kwan. We produced 7 of those. We also produced 7 virtual spotlight programs featuring 10 different HSO small ensembles. And then last summer, we were able to do a concert series in person called Summer Splash, which features 4 different HSO ensembles in about 10 different performances around the state of Connecticut, just small, socially distanced performances. We were also able to do 4 conducting instructional videos with our assistant conductor, Adam Boyles. We did many collaborative performances with our orchestra, so kind of that band in a box type of thing where you see 86 different musicians and 86 different boxes and 86 different locations and mix those together. And then we had a distinct pivot to a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, working on ending systemic racism in the American orchestra and working on bringing classical music to the forefront for all who seek it. It's traditionally a medium consumed by old white men who using music that was written and performed by old white men, and we're trying to change that and give everyone who seeks it that access to classical music and its performance. And then we were able to continue our Sunday serenades virtually, as well as some different performances through our youth, our solo festival in collaboration with the Hart School and our Young Artist series. So we brought everything right onto HSO to Go, and we made it free for those willing to log on and consume that medium. And in that way, we were able to keep infusing our school kids, even though they weren't in school, with that musical content, keep providing those lessons, and actually stream right into your own home rather than bringing the orchestras into the schools.
That's great. Now, of course, as a performer, there's a big difference between performing in front of a live audience and performing in front of a camera. How were the performances received by the audiences, and how did the musicians react to them?
That's a really interesting question. It's hard to tell. We get written or verbal feedback on how they were received by the audiences, but there's nothing like ending a piece and hearing that roaring applause, whether you're a part of the applause or you're part of the people receiving that applause. When you end a piece and it's big and it's beautiful and robust and it just stops and then there's silence and the camera cuts out, that's obviously a very different feeling. We adapted and we got used to that, but it's not something that we would want to do in the long term. And I think for the audience as well, the audience adapted to viewing content digitally and not being there kind of consumed by the music, surrounded by it. And that became okay in the short term, but it was very clear to everyone involved, both the performer and the patron, that this isn't a way that we want to permanently consume music, that there's no replacement for the concert hall experience.
Yeah, as a fan of classical music, I can say there's nothing quite like the live performance, not just because of the feedback, but also the acoustics of the concert hall And, if anybody who's been to a classical concert knows the setup of the orchestra, so you have different instruments coming at you as an audience members from different parts of the stage, and it
Yes.
really is an immersive performance, and that's very difficult to duplicate remotely.
Absolutely. And a good example of that is, as I mentioned last summer, in a limited capacity, we were able to bring back some live performances outdoors. And these were small ensemble performances, between 4 and 10 musicians performing socially distanced on the stage, or, we did a lot of pop-up concerts on Pratt Street in Hartford, different museums and things like that around, and limited audience, maybe 100 to 300 people tops. And even with that, with the thin instrumentation, with the thin audience, it was a drastically emotional response from the audience and from the musicians. People were just blown away by the difference after, being in isolation for that long. And at that point, we're just talking about March until June, let's say, of last year. After being away from it that long, it was an emotional response from the audience and the musicians to be performing live and consuming music live, even in that limited capacity.
No, and obviously last Friday night, the coup de grace over at Simsbury Meadows, and the theme was disco, so you couldn't help but getting up out of your seats and dancing and so on. We were in the sponsor section because my financial planner invites us every year for one concert, and it was amazing to look back and see everybody out there on the lawn again, having a wonderful time, because that's such a beautiful venue, and obviously the musicians appreciate it so much. And you're also blessed to have a beautiful venue in the Bushnell too, because that's an amazing concert hall. And have been lucky enough to experience it both ways, because I actually spent a half a year in the Hartford Chorale, like in 1999. So being up there singing a Mozart concert was absolutely amazing. So with the backup by you folks, doing the Requiem, that's how we started the show. So I will never forget that. So it's obviously getting back in the venues is really something special.
Absolutely. And I'm lucky enough to be standing in the Bushnell right now. I get to take this in every morning when I walk in the building, and it's never quite lost on me how lucky we are to be in such a beautiful space, or to have such a beautiful space here in Hartford, to take in the arts and to experience music and theater the way that it was meant to be experienced. We're also lucky to have that in the Simsbury Meadows Performing Arts Center, which is the concert that you're referring to on Friday. It's part of our Talcott Mountain Music Festival series. And we have our final concert in that series coming up this Friday with a show called Super Diamond, the music of Neil Diamond, which will be followed by a fireworks display. But Friday was the biggest party of the year. It was just, it's basically like going to a 3-hour wedding with a really great DJ, when you're just, spinning your favorite hits of anything that you want to dance to. It's that, but with a live orchestra, and it goes all night long and into the darkness, and it's just a great party atmosphere. And I think we had the music of the Beatles 2 weeks ago, and I think they said it best when they just looked out over the 5,000 people that were there, and they said, "We literally can't see where you guys stop." You just look out on the sea of people. And to see that after not being able to be with anyone for the last year and a half, it's an incredible sight, and it's an incredible testament to how hungry people are for music again.
Yeah, and you are so creative with that series, because you always have a theme. Unfortunately, the one that we were supposed to go to was the one that got rained out, which was the Queens of Soul, and I imagine that would have been amazing. But you always have different types of music every single week, so people can pick and choose where they want to go. And it's just amazing how flexible you can see an orchestra get in dealing with the people that they have on stage. So, I mean, last week where you had 3 guys and a drummer that came out like the Bee Gees dressed in there, and you had the orchestra behind the panels and so on and so forth. It was amazing. It was just an amazing way to look at things, and I could tell everybody was having a ball up there on stage too.
It's a great time, and I'm sorry you got rained out of Queens of Soul. We are hoping to be able to bring that back at some point during the winter or spring as an indoor show here at the Bushnell. So we are actively working on that so that people don't miss out because that's supposed to be an incredible show as well. But it's music that people wants to hear, and that's what we're working on. Classical music in its purest form is not relatable for everyone, and we try to make it relatable for everyone by putting it in a context they can understand. So you might think to yourself, I don't enjoy classical music. I never listen to classical music. It has no place in my life. But then you see our orchestra performing the soundtrack to Harry Potter while the movie plays on a screen in the background. And you realize for the first time that without that music, that movie would be nothing. And you can physically watch that the orchestra plays from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie, literally without a break, just straight through. And how much of your life is processing classical music and you don't even realize it. And that's when your eyes start to open a little bit and say, okay, this is different than, kind of the stuffy music I thought it was. This is actually exciting, and it raises your heart rate and it gets you excited about the things that are on the screen or things that are happening in the hall. And that's when people can start to understand it. So we're trying to expose people to classical music in ways that are palatable and in ways that help them develop a passion for it.
Yeah, and you did a terrific job on Friday night because the orchestra itself had 2 interludes where the performers were not on stage. And one of them was you played a series of TV show tunes and then a series of movie tunes. And we were all sitting there at a table and, basically we were kind of old and stuff like that. And we were playing Name That Tune and see if we could get it. But it was just so amazing just flowing through all that. And it's beautiful stuff.
Yeah, there's nothing like hearing some of those TV themes that you haven't heard in 30 years and just pops up and you say, oh, that's MASH. It just, you don't recognize how far displaced from that we've been and what an impact that had in your life. You were emotionally connected to those television shows. That was your Thursday evening. And so when the music comes on, that immediately identifies you for what you were feeling during that period of your life and how you connected to the things around you, and the music brings it all back.
Absolutely. Yeah, college days for me.
You make a good point about people not realizing how affected they are by classical music. They think of it as, well, that's an orchestra that I go to see, and that's it. But I've been lucky enough to see a couple of movies with the live orchestra playing the soundtrack, and you do realize how much that is integral to the movie going experience. And going back, you mentioned TV themes, but I've actually seen a couple of Looney Tunes cartoons with the live orchestra. What's Opera Doc and The Barber of Seville. And you realize how much this was a part of a lot of our childhood without even knowing it at the time.
Looney Tunes, for I would say most of us, that was our first introduction to classical music. And they did it in a way where you had no idea that you were being inundated with these masterpieces. You were there to watch the cartoon. But now when you hear the song independent of it, you immediately think of the cartoon. And if you were to watch the cartoon without the music, it wouldn't make sense to you. It wouldn't be funny. It wouldn't be entertaining. They're locked together now. And I think that was a fantastically deliberate way to introduce kids and adults to the classics.
Yeah, there's actually a meme, several memes on social media. I've shared and posted them myself on several occasions. It's just a picture of one of the Looney Tunes cartoons, and the caption just reads, "Admit it, everything you learned about high culture, you learned from Looney Tunes."
It's true. It's true. I don't think I've seen many anvils since then either. But, and I thought quicksand was going to be a much bigger problem.
Yes, exactly.
And I think I saw Wile E. Coyote in my woods the other. I'm just kidding. But,
yes.
But you have the Bushnells, and then you have the series in Simsbury. Are there other shows going on, or are you using other venues too? I mean, what kind of upcoming programming do you have?
Sure. Well, our year-round home is in the Bushnell. That's where our offices are located as well, and they're extremely gracious. And we couldn't ask for a more beautiful or a more state-of-the-art home to have. Our summertime home is at Simsbury Meadows, which is an incredible outdoor venue. And if you haven't been there, you definitely need to get there. They have a large concert series every summer, as well as some comedy shows and things apart from the symphony that are just fantastic. But we try to appear in as many places as possible. We've stopped expecting people to just come meet us where we are, and we've started meeting people where they are. And I think that that's really the best way to expose the community to our mission. And we're trying to enrich the lives and our community through great music, and the best way to do that is to be out in the community. So when we were recording our videos during COVID, we would pick a shuttered venue from somewhere around Hartford, whether it be Real Artways or the Wadsworth or something like that. And we would put our ensemble in those venues so that you could see not only the ensemble, but the beauty of the venues around Hartford. We like to do outdoor shows. We like to be in Bushnell Park. We like to be over on Pratt Street. We like to be, at the Hillstead Museum. Anywhere where people are, that's where we should be. We're trying to meet them where they are. So our home is really Greater Hartford. It's no single place. We bring the music to the people, and then in hopes that they'll enjoy it enough so that they'll come meet us at the Bushnell or come meet us at Talcott.
All right, so we do have a national audience here, so I would be remiss if I didn't ask: has the Hartford Symphony recorded? Can people get recordings?
People can get recordings. We actually have recorded a tremendous amount of material during the last 14 months or so. The best place to look for recordings right now, we have many video and audio recordings up on HSO to go right now. So the best place to go is hartfordsymphony.org and click on HSO to go. We've got full concerts. We've got full ensemble performances, small ensemble performances. We've got access to discussions with our musicians, discussions with our conductors, panel discussions with national panelists, really, really dedicated and talented people from around the country. And you can take in a variety of different subject matter. We've also premiered some movies over the past 14 months and worked with several different filmmakers to premiere those movies and to offer talkbacks with the filmmakers, and a lot of those are available on our website as well. So definitely check out HSO to go for as much recorded content as you can consume.
Fantastic. And we are just about out of time. So for those of our listeners who are in the Greater Hartford area or maybe visiting the Greater Hartford area, what's coming up and how can they get tickets?
So the closest thing is this Friday night. We have Super Diamond at the Simsbury Meadows Performing Arts Center. The best way to get tickets, there are some lawn seats left. They are $25 each general admission, and it's first come, first serve. So the best way to get those tickets, just visit hartfordsymphony.org. We're also looking forward to the return of our Masterworks series that opens up the first weekend in October. So we will have more information posted on that also at hartfordsymphony.org, and you can get tickets through there. We're also bringing back our Pop series. So we will be presenting Harry Potter again this year with a live orchestra, as well as our Holiday Cirque Spectacular, which is, if you haven't seen the show, it's our orchestra performing holiday music while acrobats and tumblers are tumbling from the ceiling and performing on tight ropes and in rings and flying over the audience. It's quite a spectacle to see around the holiday time. So check out our Pop series, our Masterworks series, and our Talcott series, and then we'll be bringing lots of different small concert opportunities to venues, hopefully near you, very soon.
That's terrific. Eric, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you both.
Hey, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners this week?
Wow. I mean, I've lived in Connecticut since the 60s. And back then, the Bushnell was there, the Hartford Symphony was there. But getting through COVID was great, but all the different things you do thinking outside the box. I love the term meeting people where they are and just bringing the show where the people are. And it's just so amazing. And we did talk today about the backgrounds for music and so on and so forth. So people, I hopefully are a lot more aware now that music is everywhere in a lot of different forms, even if it's in the background. But it's so fantastic that you're here now doing so well. And it was just wonderful to have you on the show today. Love the Hartford Symphony. Just love music, period.
Thank you both so much, and I hope to see you very soon at a concert.
Yes. I think for me, the big takeaway is the idea that music has such an influence on our lives and such an impact even when we're not aware of it. So it's really important to, listen up, see what's around you, and be part of it. And, the way Hartford Symphony is part of the community, that's a great thing. And I think people should really be aware of what's going on in their communities and how they can benefit from them. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.